It's not about the jargon. It's not about the jargon. It's not about the frickin' jargon. Every damn time you tell an academic that there's a problem with scholarly prose, they retreat straight to, actually, it's really important that we use that technical language to make it easy for other scholars to understand. And that makes it not as easy for lay people, but, like, it's not supposed to be, so we don't have to fix anything. And I am telling you motherfuckers that the problem is not the jargon. The problem is not the technical language. The problem is not the necessity of prior experience. The problem is not that amateur readers don't understand the basic premises that underpin your argument. The problem is that your writing is bad. And academic writing is bad in some truly bizarre and unique ways. Something like a third to half of the books and papers I've read in grad school so far are written in a style that I've been calling scholarly impressionism. And let me be blisteringly clear here. I am talking about everything from rhetoric and critical theory to quantitative science papers. Yeah, communication is a wide fucking field, and that's not to mention the out-of-department shit that I've done, which has been as bad, if not worse. At least comm scholars believe in the existence of the public, which, from a writing standpoint, does not appear to be standard. Impressionist painters worked quickly, putting down dramatic, visible brushstrokes that suggested forms rather than literally transposing them onto the canvas. When looked at as a whole, the works give the impression of the forms that they're meant to depict, but if you look too close, you lose the correspondence. You're just seeing globs of paint that look nothing like what they're meant to capture. Works of scholarly impressionism operate on a similar principle. They paint with words and phrases, assembling paragraphs that, when skimmed, give the impression of the information that the author meant to convey. This can be done well or badly. My favorite scholarly impressionist is Marshall McLuhan, the guy who said the medium is the message. His works often don't quite actually say the thing that he's trying to get you to think, but at least the way that it hits me, it feels like you're in on it. Like he trusts that you understand that he's trying to get an idea across, and that's a different thing than making an argument for an idea. But that's Impressionism as an art form. Far more common is Impressionism as a hand wave, the you know what I mean argument. In many scholarly works, you'll find sentences that just can't possibly mean what they explicitly semantically mean. And if you're an experienced scholar, you'll correct the sentence in your head, turning it into something that means the thing that it must have meant to mean. I suspect that once you've been doing it long enough, you don't even notice the difference. This sentence could only mean one thing, and it's got all of the relevant words in it. Who cares what order they're in, or which other words are appearing between them? And if you're a working scholar, including grad students, but especially seasoned and experienced academics, and you're about to leave a comment about how the important thing is readability within the field, and changing the way you write to accommodate people outside it would actually slow down the scholars you really need to reach, I want you to listen to me. And I want you to imagine, while I say this next bit, that I'm standing over you, with my hands on the sides of your head, eyes wide open and boring into yours, with a wide and disturbingly joyless smile on my face. It is bad for the words in your papers to mean things you didn't intend for them to mean. It's not about the jargon. It's not about the jargon. It's not about the fucking jargon. I love jargon. I'm ride or die for jargon. I support the use of existing jargon, and when appropriate jargon doesn't exist and you need to reference a complicated idea over and over again, I support coining new jargon then and there. Sometimes just for the purpose of the conversation you're having. Don't wear it if the boot don't fit. I've read lots of totally competently written papers in grad school, and some that were even a delight to read, but some of y'all are contradicting your abstracts in your methods sections. Scholarly impressionism can be a beautiful writing style, but it's a different thing than a research paper, and it shouldn't be making cameo appearances in papers with methods sections. There's a lot of room for improvement even in competent academic papers. If you're writing prose that means what it's supposed to mean and you want to write clearer and more engaging prose, subscribe now because I am going to get to that in future videos. But if you're getting defensive because all the words in your papers do mean what you intend for them to mean and you think that should be good enough, I don't disagree. It gets the job done. But you gotta stop telling people they can count on scholarly papers meeting that minimum standard. They can't. You have peers who don't write what they mean to say, and this industry is so acclimated to that bullshit that it glides right through peer review. Alright. I'm T.X. Swanson. I'm 37 years old, and I've been a working writer for my whole adult life. About half that time it was intrinsic to my day job and was how I was making my living. I have written more in some years of my life than a mildly underperforming scholar will write in their entire career. And easily the most upsetting thing about being a grad student is that in the eyes of both scholars and non-academics, when I accepted admission to a PhD program, I went from being an industry expert whose experience and competence entitles me to respect to intrinsically incompetent and confused. And when the question of my prior expertise comes up, delusionally arrogant too. I don't know how it is in other Western cultures, but here, people see grad students as if we see ourselves as the sons of noblemen, acting like we're entitled to treat ourselves like we're upper class before we've earned the degree that actually permits us to do so. And I will straight up block commenters who come in here with a Marxist analysis of the term upper class in that sentence. Class is a cultural concept and you fucking know it. But grad students, especially first-generation grad students like me, are actually uniquely positioned to observe the properties of the barrier between the academy and the public because we're actively in the process of crossing it. Humans are very bad at understanding what it's like to not know things we already know, so experts tend to be really bad at understanding what it's like to go from not knowing something to knowing it. That is to say, what it's like to learn it. This is super interesting, actually. Like, you'd think that if you learned something, you would remember having learned it, and so you'd know what learning it's like, but the process of learning actually is destroying the mechanism in your brain that you would have used to model the experience of not knowing it. And obviously, non-experts, people who don't know the thing, don't know what it's like to go from not knowing the thing to knowing the thing, so neither of those groups are as competent to understand what it's like to learn the thing as the people who are currently learning it. There are scholars who specifically study learning, and even specifically study how we learn particular things, but you have to learn that separately. That's not something that comes for free with having learned the thing in the first place. And I'm going to be so real with you guys. The people who study grad school don't think we're nailing it. So, and I'm addressing experienced scholars again here, say whatever you want in the comments, but understand that when you try to pull rank on me about whether I am accurately experiencing the process that I am currently moving through and that you are not, my takeaway from that is that you don't even have an undergraduate level of understanding of the psychology of education, which is embarrassing for you as a professional educator. The problem with explaining what's bad about this sentence doesn't mean what it's clearly supposed to mean is that in order to prove that that's actually true, you have to demonstrate a complete understanding of the overall argument of the work and the way that that work fits into the context of the field in which it was written. This is very difficult to communicate to somebody outside the field who is likely to look at the sentence and say, maybe it just means what it says and you're overreacting. And if you want to establish the existence of a pattern, you've got to do that whole process for each individual example. And then on the other hand, when you try to explain it to somebody who does have all that context, you tend to get, you know what they mean, don't be pedantic. Except I didn't always know what they mean, because I'm pretty new to the field, and communication is a big fucking field, and there are a lot of parts of it where I don't know the base assumptions and never will. What the people who say that mean is, I know what they mean. And having spent years developing the professional skill of reading the sentences that aren't there instead of the ones that are, I'm too invested in the importance of that skill to entertain the idea that the papers shouldn't have been written wrong in the first place. So to the public, it's hard to prove that the problem exists, and to scholars, it's hard to prove that it's a problem. And it just is, okay? It's bad for the getting things right industry, with its special gatekeeping process for getting things even righter than everybody else, to be routinely getting things wrong by carelessness. It's bad that in order to not be told incorrect information by some papers, you need to have the special professional skill of reading sentences that aren't there instead of the ones that are. It's bad that if all the physicists disappeared tomorrow and we wanted to repopulate the field by studying the literature, we wouldn't just need new physics scholars, we'd need philologists. It's great to be able to use your experience and critical reading skills to patch over mistakes in a work you're reading. Everyone makes mistakes, and mistakes will always get through the screening process sometimes, but it's not okay for mistakes like that to just be the industry style. As an educational content creator who for the last 6 years has worked mainly in the humanities and a little bit in the social sciences, my least favorite scholarly paper is Fuck Nuance by Kieran Healy. Not because it's bad. It's a great paper, well written, and I agree completely with his argument. It's just, when you try to tell someone that the paper Fuck Nuance is an exploration of the ways that deploying the concept of nuance as an unqualified good inhibits sociological research, and that it is not a blanket condemnation of the concept of nuance in all contexts and under all circumstances, They tend to accuse you of hiding behind nuance to overcomplicate a straightforward argument. The people who cite fuck nuance in internet comment sections have not typically read fuck nuance, which is a shame because it's a very readable paper. Like, if you're not a sociologist or adjacent kind of scholar or relevant kind of nerd, you probably won't understand literally every sentence, but you'll come away with an incomplete understanding, not an incorrect one. Those are different things, and that difference is important. Also, the first Google result for fuck nuance is a link to download the paper straight off Kieran Healy's personal website. No paywall, no signups, no hoops. Kieran Healy made a rhetorical choice when he titled his paper to lean hard in the direction of impact over precision. One of the consequences of that is that there are a lot of people out there who know that the paper fuck nuance exists, don't know what it says, and have made an incorrect inference. Another consequence is that in the last 9 years, it's been cited over 500 times. The fact that I'm one of the people who has to deal with that first consequence doesn't mean I think Healy made the wrong choice. Any speech or writing act has to navigate the tension between impact and precision. And in general, I have way more respect for scholars who make an effort to navigate that complexity than the ones who retreat into 16-word-long titles with multiple dependent clauses. And exploring this compromise is one of the things that I'm doing with this series. I made the same decision Healy did when I titled my second video, Academic Rigor is Kinda Bullshit, actually, and I've been dealing with the same annoying commenters because of it. Healy also made the decision to write the paper very well. It's clear, it's conversational, and the way that jargon is distributed throughout the text means that an adult reader with no field specialization will rarely have to hold two new ideas in their head at the same time. This is exactly the kind of paper scholars are talking about when we say it'll be hard for an amateur reader, but if you stick with it and try hard, you'll get through it and you'll get the information out. But my work is more complicated than Healy's, and if I have to write that clearly for non-experts, I'll wind up writing papers that are the length of whole books. Okay, fine. Please rewatch the first half of this video over and over again until you understand why that is not a coherent response to my argument. Healy's paper is a great example of readable scholarly writing, which does not mean writing that's aimed at a general audience at the expense of experts. But when you defend scholarly writing as if it's all written like that, you're lying to your audience, who aren't going to be picking out papers based on which ones are written well enough. They'll be picking them out for the same reason that anyone reads an academic paper. They want to know what the author has to say. And you cannot rightly promise them that they will reliably be able to do that. I'm not going to give you a counterexample showing what the bad writing looks like, and it's not because I don't have any, but look, let's say this curve describes the distribution of writing quality across the academy. Everything right at the midline is managing to not have any errors in it, and everything right at this second dotted line is the stuff that reads like it was written by someone whose job is writing. I can pull tons of examples from here, which, for reasons I describe at this timestamp, are bad, but it's really difficult to explain why they're bad. I've only got a few truly egregious examples, and it's kind of about where they are, because, look, there are a few fields where the distribution is a lot more like this. These fields produce a lot of the most confused and impenetrable writing in the academy, but they also have some of the clearest, most engaging, most pleasurable writers working in the industry. I'm talking about race, gender, and sexuality studies, the most constantly under attack fields in the industry, both from the inside and out. And I am not bringing up these authors in those fields without bringing up these ones in the same sentence. But I'm also not really interested in getting into a discussion about systemic problems with the Academy, starting with the Academy's most marginalized participants. Eventually, I'm going to run into a paper that's this bad from one of these fields, something that won't take a whole other research paper to explain what's wrong with it. And when I do, I will tear it apart in public, I promise. I really thought when I started writing this video that I was going to get to more than one kind of problem with academic prose, but after the third page on the first point, I decided that it needed the room to breathe. I think that the next one's going to be about the busted incentive structures influencing scholarly prose, but for now, let's hammer home that central point one more time. If you're writing a scholarly paper, the words in it should mean the things that you intended for them to mean. You're about to see my Patreon supporters start scrolling by, which does mean we're at the end of the video, but if you stick around to the very end, I'll tell you the punchline to this joke. Why did the Scarecrow get an award? If you want to see me keep making videos about breaking down the walls between the Academy and the public, if you think the Academy is a public good and it needs to be held to account for acting like it, back me on Patreon at patreon.com/txwatson. Your support makes it possible for me and my collaborator Cecilia to keep these videos coming and helps keep my financial stake in the Academy centered on you, the public, and not university administrators and journal publishing executives. I am racing my roommate, Astrid Lundberg, the paleontology creator and local rock star, to 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. And we're neck and neck right now. She needs another 24,000 subscribers, and I only need 97,000. So subscribe and share this video to help me beat Astrid to 100K so that I can hang up my silver play button in our apartment before she does. And listen, if you hit the like button now, you can always come back and unclick it. But if you don't hit it right now, you'll probably never think to come back and like this video later. Why take the risk? Like the video. Thank you so much for watching. You can also follow the Patreon for free if you want updates on the stuff that I'm doing. And because he was outstanding in his field.